The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
We have a question from Sandra from Dallas, Texas. And Sandra writes, Trump is claiming that the U.S. is now in charge of Venezuela and that we are going to be running that country. Dr. Mark has always said that invasion is easy. Occupation is the hard part. I know the Maduro regime wasn't popular, but do you think the Venezuelan people are going to lie down and accept being a colony of the United States? And although I've heard no details as to how the U.S. will run Venezuela, is this even possible? What do you think this might look like, and what challenges and or dangers do you see for American troops managing this situation? Trump can't run our country. How does anyone think he can run a country that is such a mess as Venezuela is? Excellent question, Sandra. Thank you. Thank you for writing in. Mark, Scott?
I agree with the comment that Trump can't run our country. How the hell does he expect to run anybody else? I don't think we can. Now, we're getting, again, it's early days. We're getting different comments made about, we're not going to actually be there. We're going to influence them. We're going to get them to do the things that we want. We'll see how that plays out. Although, if Trump on Air Force One says, we're running the show. So I don't know how that's going to play out. And I think that's something we'll probably see in the next couple of weeks, if there is even a plan. I don't really see how you could do it anyway. It's sort of like, how did that work for us in Afghanistan? How did that work for us in Iraq?
And in Vietnam.
Yeah. I mean, how did that in Korea? How did that work for us in those instances? And yes, Sandra, you're correct. I'm a firm believer that, invasion it's easy. I mean, compared to holding on to it. Because once you try to hold on to it, you're putting your people in harm's way. Now, let's also remember in the attack the other day to get Maduro, yes, there were 40 civilians or military people killed, Venezuelans. There were also Americans that were injured. So we lucked out because it could have been very easily Americans were killed. And the question is for what purpose? If we take it from the purpose of Scott's theory and his Venn diagram that he's got on his wall there, I mean, is that a good enough purpose to get a young American soldier killed? Is that what we're all about here? I sit back and I look at this and I say, yeah, you're right. Maduro was not popular. Maduro was a piece of shit. Plain and simple. He was a cheating piece of crap. Of course, we got one of those too. Nobody seems to be coming in and saving us from him. Canada, if you want to come in and, please knock yourselves out. Being a colony, and I kind of like the way you worded that, being a colony, because there is no plan put out there. And are we moving into a return to colonialism? And we got to remember, we're going to be talking about this in a couple other emails from now about Greenland. Are these going to be like our colonies? Are they going to be like Puerto Rico, which is basically a protectorate of the United States? They have a lot of benefits. They're citizens of the United States, but they have no power. And if we look at Puerto Rico, that's kind of like what the founding fathers bitched about with the British, which is why we broke off. Because, yeah, we're considered British citizens. Oh, that's great, but we don't have all the rights that a normal British citizen would have. That's colonialism. And in a lot of ways, that's what we're looking at and when we're talking about Puerto Rico. I don't think Venezuela, which is a lot bigger place than Puerto Rico, I don't think the people are going to be all in on that. And I don't see how the United States can possibly go into Venezuela and, as a colony, improve where they stand now. They can improve oil companies. They may bring down the cost of some things. Yeah, possible. although he hasn't done a very good job of it here. When you try to work this through your head, you're kind of just sitting back waiting and saying, all right, please, somebody tell me exactly what it is you're going to do. And if there's nothing we haven't learned about Trump after 5 years, and it's been a very long 5 years, what is said today and what is said 2 weeks from now could be totally different. We're still waiting for that healthcare plan that was supposed to come out two
Yep.
weeks ago. I mean, we're still hanging out waiting for that. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
that was
what would it
years
look
ago.
like? Honest to gosh, Sandra, I don't know. It may look like the Dutch in South Africa. I mean, it's not like conquering a territory and making them part of your country. This is colonialism. And the problem with colonialism is that, yeah, you're under the boot. Colonizing country is going to benefit the most. Except, as Scott pointed out earlier, if you're Monty Python, you do have to look at that. How do you get a country like Venezuela, who's already had it pretty tough? Now, some are going to argue that no matter what happens, we're going to make it better for Venezuela because it was so bad before. That's possible. And just as Scott's Monty Python example, yeah, there were roads. Yes, there was sanitation. Yes, there was safety. Yes, there was, but you were under the thumb of the Romans. You were subject to their laws and their all that. You know, you had no autonomy.
And I have a point to add to that. It's not like Trump has made the life inside the United States, as far as this year is concerned, so much better, with record bankruptcies and homelessness increasing and prices increasing and anxiety increasing. I mean, Rubio, I mean, there's not even a deputy or assistant secretary of state. So Rubio has got like 4 different jobs, and now Rubio is, what is he supposed to be, like the viceroy or the what do they call that in World War II, where each German commandant was in charge of a different Nazi occupied area. I forget what it was called. Anyway, where Rubio will be the commandant, and as I understand it, Stephen Miller may be given a larger role. And Trump has already purged the Foreign Service, the State Department. So, I mean, no one has any experts. No one seems to know anything. And we're all, as you say, I mean, we have to hope that, and hope is not a strategy. The military in Venezuela is going to just be so happy to be taken over by the United States. How are we going to take care of the regular person? I mean, if you handed Trump a map of the world and told him to point to Venezuela, I don't know if he could do it. I don't know if the average American could do it either.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Brooke, Mark's insight that invasions are easy, the aftermath is hard. You know, the one example you guys didn't bring up was Libya. Where we went in, tilted the playing field in favor of the rebels, and then didn't bother going in. Didn't, because of the backlash with Iraq, Obama didn't want to be involved in Libya. He just wanted to make sure that Gaddafi was dead and that the people had their choice of creating a government, and what they ended up with was civil war, horrific things happening, no good. I mean, to this day, I don't think Libya is really stable. It's probably not even really much of a country. And so we could see that happening in Venezuela because Edmundo Gonzalez has spoken from Spain and said, look, I'm the president of Venezuela. I need to get back there. I need to take over the country. And I don't know how many of the Venezuelans are going to support that. He did win the election, but of course in Venezuela the military has a big say in what happens, which is why Maduro was still there. And so now you've got a bunch of different generals. And if you've seen the footage of these generals with the ribbons, I mean, they've never fought a war. Where are they getting all these medals and ribbons from? Just, like congratulating one another all the time. But all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I think I should be the president of Venezuela, and now you've got a bunch of guys, who walk around with sabers all the time, fighting one another, and the legitimate president of Venezuela is stuck in Spain, unable to get back. Just, a terrible situation that you could foresee happening there. And, again, spreading. I think over the last 5 years or something like that, 8 million Venezuelans have left Venezuela. This would be like, let's say, I don't know, 25 million Venezuelans running for their lives to get away from one faction or another in a civil war, destabilizing every region around them, getting on boats and coming here, all kinds of craziness ensues. As has been pointed out before, once you start a war, you don't really know what's going to happen. And we've seen that time and time and time again. And that's really the worst consequence that you can think of when it comes to the people there, is that this completely unstable country begins to topple neighbors, and if Trump says Colombia may be next, we know that there's going to be harsh reality in Cuba. Where else are we going to see problems? And the dominoes falling all over the place, and you don't know how to put it all back together again, is really the scariest part of this. And it would be typical for Trump to just go in, break something, and say, okay, well, I did my part. I mean, I gotta say, Trump talks about like 8 wars that he's ended.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is there are 8 countries that he's bombed in 2025. I mean, this is a guy who wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. And here's the list: Venezuela, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Nigeria, Yemen, and Somalia. All of these highly capable of exploding, highly capable of becoming enormous humanitarian crises that people have to deal with around the world. The UN set up this world order so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen. And we're like 1 year in, and Trump is undoing, first of all, quitting for one thing, the UN basically destroying the world order that had been set up, that had benefited the United States so well, and now threatening to create this sort of triumvirate of spheres of influence that we've talked about before. Boy, it's, I don't see a whole lot of good here. Now, I will say this: Maduro could be back in Caracas tomorrow if he signs off on the sale of BP to Paul Singer today.
Sitco.
I'm sorry. Yes, Sitco.
That's all right.
I have BP on my mind because Paul Singer previously bought BP earlier this year or earlier in 2025. Now he's after Sitco. And he has outbid everybody else for Citgo. And it's only Venezuela, and in the person of Maduro, who has turned down the sale of Citgo to Paul Singer. I mean, this is like incredible stuff. And we used our military to do this, to get this thing for a friend of Trump's, a donor to Trump, an oligarch, shall we say. And we are living in extraordinary times, because I never thought I'd see anything like this. I mean, I know that Dick Cheney was as corrupt as get out, and Halliburton was the main winner of the Iraq War. We know that in the past there's been war profiteering and all kinds of stuff that, people have made fortunes on wars, and wars are good for the economy and all that kind of stuff. But this is the most corrupt example I think I've ever seen. And I don't think it's going to end well.
No, it's not. And I think you brought up a very good analogy there, the dominoes. This is going to be a domino effect. It's not going to end well, especially when you consider the incompetent people that are actually in in charge of this. They can't run our country. Look what they've done to our country as far as prices are concerned. Look what they've done to our country as far as divisiveness is concerned. And I think there's the good point about the military. A lot of it is going to be down to what will the military accept. Is it possible Maduro is back in Caracas tomorrow if he signs the paper? Yeah, sure, it's possible. I would say that it's even more possible when we know, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, when we know how corrupt the Venezuelan military is, who basically looks the other way for the drug runners and the cartels that are down there. Basically looks the other way because somebody's getting their pocket lined. And maybe that's where they're getting the ribbons from, Scott. Maybe the cartels are the ones that are giving them I don't know. We could be seeing a military dictatorship if the military dictatorship is willing to say, okay, you know what, Singer, you can come in and you can run all that stuff, but just make sure our pockets are lined. That could be the way this ends. And that would be a shame because military dictatorships don't usually work out very well at all.
No, they don't and then if, in my opinion, if they make a better deal with China, for example, I don't see this ending well. I agree with both of you. This is not going to end well. I'm just absolutely stunned and also apoplectic that this would even have been done in the first place, without any consideration for what is going to happen in the future and to the people themselves who have apparently no say in this whatsoever. I keep looking at the numbers of countries whom Trump has threatened, who haven't done anything. Canada, Greenland, Mexico, Panama. It's staggering.
Yeah.
And this is not going to end well. And I don't care who is in charge. If Trump can say, well, Bush did Iraq and now he's doing this. So, of course, since everything Trump does, according to Trump, is great and the greatest. And one other problem that I see is that despite Trump's having said, oh, I'm the president of peace and I'm not, no foreign entanglements and all this and that and the other, presenting himself as a dove, with the AI images of Trump wearing armor and flying that jet over New York City and dropping sewage on people. The images are that of a warrior. And my feeling is, given Trump's mentality, that he is finding that he likes using the military. It's becoming an extension of his ego, using the military or threatening to use the military for practice in American cities. I mean, who says something like that? And ICE, and I mean, notice how we're discussing the horror now that is unfolding for the people of Venezuela and what the United States will be doing in Venezuela. And meantime, the ICE raids are continuing and deportations are continuing and the other Trump corruptions are continuing. And we will have our midterms coming up this year. And if the hemisphere is destabilized, I can see that Trump might use that as a pretext to say, well, we really can't hold elections, or if he should lose, well, these aren't valid because everything is destabilized. And we're not going to be able to go back.
Well,
I mean, Mark, you were saying before, like 2036, whatever, where would you put it now until the United States might retrieve some of its democracy? Or do you want to wait till after we see what happens with the midterm elections this November?
well, it's not all.
I'm going to answer for Mark now.
Okay.
We've seen this escalate, right? One thing leads to another. Emboldened by, January 6th leads to the next atrocity. Killing fishermen off the shore of Venezuela leads to this. One thing leads to another. If you continue to appease a dictator, as Congress has done, Republicans in Congress specifically, but also Democrats aren't fighting hard enough, in my opinion, that this continues to escalate. And the martial law that's coming, the fact that he has his own police force or mini army to be used internally in the United States, you can see where this is going and where he wants it to go. And yes, I had seen, I'm not sure, I hope it's a fake story, because I had seen that Trump, it was in Politico, or it was a fake Politico article. I'm not really sure which, that Trump has decided that he's going to start wearing uniforms all the time. And he's going to keep changing uniforms from Army to Navy to Air Force to whatever, to pay homage to the branches of the military. But that he's going to stop wearing the blue suit with the red tie that he always wears, and he's going to start wearing a military uniform. I don't know if that's a real story or not. I did see it. I didn't feel like following up on it because it was such an absurd image of one of the greatest cowards in U.S. history. Putting on a military uniform is such stolen valor that it seems to me that even Trump, it would be beyond even Trump. But as we know, narcissistic personality disorder doesn't have a lot of limits to it. And it certainly could be real. And whether he puts on a uniform or not, yes, he is misusing our military in this and in other ways.
According to what I'm seeing, it is false. I guess we will have to see, but I mean, according to what I'm seeing, it is a hoax.
Yeah, that's fine. But anyway, the larger point is this.
Yeah.
He's misusing the military.
Oh, definitely.
And whether he wants to consider himself the greatest peacetime president. I guess he didn't get the prize, so he decided, I'm going to be the greatest wartime president. Now he refers to himself as a wartime president. I think that is true. That this is, that this doesn't stop. Mark, you can now speak for yourself.
Well, there we go. Yeah, I saw that thing about wearing the uniform, and my first thought is they got to find a uniform big enough to fit his fat ass. I think Scott is correct. This is all part of a plan, I guess I'm going to say. And I'm trying to, because I've always said, I think sometimes we give Trump too much credit because he isn't all that bright. And I really do think we do that. I think sometimes we give him more credit than he is actually due. But the issue that you run into, and again, what I was saying in the previous section was, what would be a conspiracy theory 20 years ago that we would have said, yeah, right, that's like little green men, or what was it, the lizard people, or whatever. Today we're basically looking at saying, gosh, this is so crazy, it's possible. That's a troubling place for us to be, where we've always said that if you say something enough times, people begin either get tired of listening to it and just say, okay, fine, I'm going to believe it, just go away. Or they begin to believe that it's true because they get indoctrinated into it. And I think that we are at the point now where we're susceptible. If you were to say this to a Democrat, the theory that Scott has come up with, they're going to say, oh, yeah, I see it clear as day. If you were to say it to a Republican, they're going to say, oh, no, that's not it. And the fact is, that's what makes this so dangerous, that we cannot come to an agreement as to what the problem really is. And I've said this so many times before on this podcast and in lectures that I've given. I remember a time where Republicans and Democrats didn't agree, but at least they agreed on what the problem was. Their division was how to fix it. That was where the division came from. But they could at least look at a problem and identify it and say, yeah, hey, that's a problem. We got it. We are not even capable of doing that now. We have half the group saying it is a problem, half the group saying it's not a problem. And when you can't get an entire company to agree that there is a problem that exists, you cannot fix it. Because half the country can't fix the other half country. And I think that's That's where we sit right now. But yeah, again, I don't give Trump all this credit. I think he's manipulated all along. And when I read the thing about wearing the uniform, all I could think of was that German general that said, "I'm a general taking orders from a corporal." And I can assure you, there's some generals probably sitting in the Pentagon right now saying, "I'm a general, served my country all these years, rose to a high rank, and I'm taking orders from Private Bone Spur." It's got to be demoralizing to them. But in the long run, the question is going to be, when this all plays out, and it will eventually all play out, whose heads are going to roll? And that's going to be an interesting thing, and that's going to be a reckoning that our country has to come to. We're going to have to come to a reckoning. We thought it was bad before. And Brooke, you asked, I said 2036. I think it all depends. It actually might come sooner. Because if the country says, enough of the bullshit, we've seen enough. What's the old Popeye? That's all I can stand. I can't stand no more. If we get to that point, then this could change and turn around very, very quickly. The question is what direction is it going to change? And I think that's the thing that we have to really think about. All right, that's it for that one.
Tammy writes from Syracuse, New York. Tammy says, we have heard very little from the rest of the world following the U.S. attack on Venezuela. What do you think the rest of the world's reaction might be once the dust settles? Dr. Scott theorized that Trump is setting up conditions under which the U.S., China, and Russia carve up the world into spheres of influence. I'm starting to hear more along these lines in mainstream media. Yet some outlets are saying this might send a message to Putin and Xi Jinping to behave themselves. Do you think this is a reasonable assessment? Or do you think this is something Greenland and the other territories Trump has mentioned, Colombia, Mexico, etc., should be more concerned about? Excellent questions, Tammy. Mark Scott?
Scott, somebody actually does pay attention to you.
I guess.
Mainstream media is starting to talk about exactly what you've been theorizing.
Yeah, sadly, I think, I'm always one who's like, God, I hope I'm wrong. It just doesn't happen that often. The only time I really think I was ever wrong was when the Knicks drafted Porzingis, and I was like, what a disaster, and he turned out to be a pretty good player. So anyway, here's the issue as far as the spheres of influence thing goes. I don't see China withholding attacking Taiwan anymore. Like I think that once they're ready, once they think that they can actually pull it off, they're going to go ahead and do that. They're going to start making demands. They'll start putting pressure on Taiwan. Trump is not going to respond because it's not in our interest to. As long as they can spirit out the main data scientists at TMC, whatever it's called, the chip maker for the world, and bring them here so that they can make their chips here instead of there. I think that China will do this, and China will exercise no restraint when it comes to that, because there is not going to be the world order that has prevented them from doing it in the past. And as far as Russia is concerned, here I think there's a problem because Russia's just not that good. And I don't think that, for example, I don't believe, unless they resorted to using nuclear war, that Russia could defeat a combined allied force of European countries and a smattering of other countries around the world that would want to keep them from overrunning Poland and the Baltic states and so on and so forth. So I don't think that Russia really will be included in the end, not because Trump doesn't want them to. Bizarrely, he seems to, and we really do need to get to the bottom of that at some point or another and find out what his obsession with Russia is really all about. But they're not. I mean, I believe somebody can fact check me on this, that Russia's entire economy is about the same as Massachusetts, and that they don't have the power. They don't have the military power. Ukraine has proved that. They're not innovative. They don't have anything special that makes them, in any way powerful in terms of natural resources. Yes, they've got oil, but in terms of like innovation, I guess would really be my main thing. I mean, nobody's ever bought a Russian car, as far as I know. They don't have much of an industry. They don't really output anything. Everything they get is taken from other places. So I don't know why they would be in that triumvirate. But I do think that Trump will greenlight China having its sphere of influence in Asia, and that, to the chagrin of our allies in South Korea, Japan, Australia, the Philippines, that will happen. And I honestly couldn't tell you what the outcome of it will be, but it can't be good. And the only thing that's going to prevent that from happening is somebody here in the United States taking down Trump as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, what that leaves you with is JD Vance, I suppose. And JD Vance is the vassal to Peter Thiel and a whole nother group of would-be global leaders in the tech world who believe that they know what is best for the world, and it is not compatible with democracy. And so you get into that whole thing, which we've discussed before. The Curtis Yarvin. I mean, I don't know if you saw that Curtis Yarvin actually came out with a Substack last week, I believe it was, that Trump has already failed, that his opportunity to do that has passed. I don't know what that's based on exactly. I don't think it's true, but I'm not sure that that's where Trump's interest lies anyway. That's more the JD Vance thing. I don't think Trump wants to see the CEOs run the world. Not that it's too Orwellian for him, but it is awful Orwellian. In any event, the stability of the world created after World War II really does appear to be over. Like, that era is over. And we've got to prepare for the next one, whatever it's going to be. I think we're behind. I don't think that we've done a great job of preparing for it. I don't know what needs to be done exactly, but it's probably going to have a lot to do with, if we want to prevent China from doing what we think China is going to do, putting a lot more emphasis in the Pacific, looking eastward, is that westward, I guess, for us, to prevent China from becoming the global dominating partner that I actually think China does want to be, and thinks that they deserve to be, at least in the person of Xi Jinping. But but this is definitely a step in that direction, and it's let's just call it destabilizing for now, because I don't know how it's going to end up. But that does seem to be Trump's philosophy, is like, you let us do what we want to do in the Western Hemisphere, and you can do whatever you want over there where you guys are. And again, it's not going to work out for Russia because they don't have the juice, but China could be a real powerhouse in Asia and in the Pacific. That could be a real big problem.
I've always listened to Scott talk about this theory of his, and I've been listening to, a lot of the mainstream media is starting to talk about it. And I always ask them, have you given proper citation to Dr. Gershwer? Because this is where I heard it first. But one of the problems that I had, even when Scott was first talking about it, was the Russia component. United States, China, I could see. Russia, who has demonstrated that they're pretty much a paper bear. I mean, they can't beat the Ukrainians. I don't think that there's any possibility that they could beat a combined Europe. No matter how unprepared Europe may be, Russia would lose that war. I have heard, I think it was Nigel Farage of Great Britain, who's a complete whack job. He basically said that he thought that this is serving notice to Putin and to Xi Jinping. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I do believe that it's saying to Ping, you do what you want where you're at. Yes, people in New Zealand, people in Australia, people in that general sphere of influence area probably need to be concerned if this was to happen. Now, the question, Japan should be concerned. So where does that, leave the Russias of the world? Well, maybe the Chinese sphere of influence includes Russia because Russia has something they don't: oil. Maybe Russia becomes the vassal state of China, which I think takes a lot of pressure off the Europeans because I don't think the Chinese could expand quite that far. And as far as Africa is concerned, China looks at Africa as a place of opportunity. Bunch of resources. We're going to help you out. This is an opportunity. They're actually playing this like actually decent businessmen that have not made 6 casinos go bankrupt. So they're playing this. I think they're playing it quite well. So there's a possibility Russia, from Scott's original theory, is taken off the board and becomes the vassal. Because, as I say, they have something the Chinese doesn't, and that's oil, natural gas. That's a commodity, and that's a commodity that China needs desperately. So no, I don't think that it's a warning to them at all. I do think that Scott's idea of this sphere of influence, minus the Russia component, I think has validity. Probably Greenland, Colombia, Mexico, they probably should be a bit on the concerned side. We've already heard that in Greenland, they're on high alert. The Kingdom of Denmark is taking this very seriously. The question then comes down to Denmark as part of NATO. If you attack a protectorate of NATO, what does that mean as far as NATO's concerned? Article 5. So we're in very troubling times. And I was listening to LBC, which is leading British conversation today, O'Brien, and he basically says people like Keir Starmer of the UK really don't know what to do at this point in time. This is so far out of the realm of what they would expect that, especially from the United States, they would expect it from Russia. They would expect it kind of from China. But let's remember, China's a lot more business than they are anything else. But they could take over Taiwan. There's no doubt about it. But coming from the United States, this has them all sitting basically back on their heels. The Germans, the French, all of those allies that we have are looking at us and are trying to, and they must be asking themselves, who are these people? Who are these Americans? And why are they allowing this to continue? And the fact is because our system gives us only a few outs. Sorry. And yeah, if we get rid of Trump, let's say they impeach him. Let's say Trump goes, goodbye. Now we're stuck with Vance. Is that a better alternative?
In my opinion, no.
I don't know.
So.
Maybe not.
I would say yes to that only because I don't think that he has the hold that that Trump has over Congress. And I wanted to bring up this before I forget. We saw this once before, where Woodrow Wilson decided that the United States needed to enter World War I, and our presence in the war, our capabilities proved decisive. And within a year, the World War I was over. The next step was to create a world order and to prevent World War I from ever happening again. And so they sat down and they hammered out the League of Nations. Congress, in its wisdom here in the United States, refused to join the League of Nations. And without our presence in the League of Nations, the League of Nations didn't have the teeth that it needed to have in order to prevent the rise of Hitler and eventually World War II. And so having a weaker leader, maybe somebody with a different vision for what the world should be, but without the support of Congress that Trump, however he's managed to do it, has had, would be a better situation, I think, overall for the world and certainly for the United States. I will say that one of the interesting aspects about the J.D. Vance owing his whole world to the tech bros, right, to Peter Thiel specifically, but also to others, Mark Andreessen and a whole bunch of other sort of would-be oligarchs and would-be world rulers from the tech world standpoint, is that their reliance on data centers as their special sauce that makes them powerful also relies on vast amounts of energy, right? So we know that for the data center that would be, I forget whether it was Microsoft or Apple or one of those big companies needs to build for its AI ambitions would be 8 Californias. Like that's a freaking lot of energy. And where are you going to get that energy? Well, it could be Venezuela. Venezuela could be the new data center colony of the tech bros. Could be in Africa, right? Where Nigeria has lots of resources. You just look around the world and you see where could the energy come from that would be needed to generate the power that AI demands. And you see some of these countries pop up, which puts them in play, which gives an interesting sort of alternative universe aspect to this whole thing, that we may be looking in the wrong direction altogether. Well, somebody has got their other hand on something else, completely that we didn't see, and that is going to be uniquely powerful in the future.
And this all really comes back to what we've been saying for the past, months or actually years, that there is so much going on. It is impossible for a rational person, even if you've got Scott's big board with the strings and the yarn and stuff, it's almost impossible to look at this and come up with a coherent. I won't say we can't come up with a coherent. We can come up with hundreds of different possible coherents.
Yeah, more like that. Yeah.
It's too many to basically say, yeah, that looks like the best one. I mean, there's so many different possibilities here that it almost becomes impossible to give any kind of model that we could say with any certainty, yeah, this is what would happen. Because we don't know. And there are so many factors involved in this. And it's corruption, it's power, it's money, it's corporations, it's energy, it's AI, it's just the list is so huge that it makes it almost impossible to sit back and say, yeah, I think that's the right direction there. I think that's the potential outcome there. And that's basically where we sit, Tammy, is in that stage where I can say this to your question. Do I think this is about Putin and Xi Jinping being asked to behave themselves? No, not at all. No. I think that's a reasonable assessment. I think that, and I know where you got it from, was Nigel Farage, who was that whack job in England. I did hear him say something similar to that yesterday, but no, I don't think this is something that is meant to do that. I think it maybe has the opposite impact. But Greenland right now, you'd almost say in a sane world, that's not going to happen. But we're no longer a sane world. Mexico, not going to happen. Oh yeah, well that's in a sane world. And how much colonization does the United States intend to engage in before somebody says, this is colonialism again? And guess what, boys and girls? That didn't work out so good. Maybe we should rethink the strategy.
Well, and I'm not convinced. I do agree that this is a relaxation of world order to the point of let Xi and Putin do whatever they want to do. I don't know where anybody would get the idea that Trump is saying, well, to Xi and to Putin, oh, you better stay in line. That's never going to happen.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Sciences, the JICS. This open access journal, double peer-reviewed, provides a platform for emerging scholars to publish their work and engage in meaningful dialogue across disciplines. The JICS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis and is published through the NovaWorks Scholarly Repository at Nova Southeastern University. You'll find a link to the journal in our episode description.